Hi, it's Steve Hargadon, and welcome to the closing keynote session of Libraries as Community Anchors, our Library 2.021 mini conference. Special thanks to our founding partner, San Jose State University's School of Information, and a special appreciation to Dr. Sandra Hirsch for her support. And I'm going to turn some time over to her for 1 second.
Hi, everyone. I just want to thank our excellent partners, Kristen, Rebmann, and Dawn Means, for helping us with the session today. And I hope with the mini conference today, and always to my excellent partner, Steve Hargadon, who does such a fantastic job of organizing these sessions for us. And I hope that you will enjoy this closing keynote and that you've had a really productive and thought-provoking mini conference with the opening keynote session and with the various sessions that happened after that. So enjoy the final keynote and I look forward to this conversation continuing.
Thank you, Sandy. I just want to send a really warm thank you to you and Steve for creating this opportunity and this context for us to share our work and build our connections and give voice to the connections that we have been working with. It's really valuable to have venues like this, especially for us to involve students and new professionals so that they're able to expand their own programs of research and just raise their profile. So to me, it's really fun, it's great, and it's really productive to our library and information science community. So thank you. I appreciate it. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I have a few slides to share today. And so this is our closing keynote. And I'm going to, we want to focus today on some future directions for libraries as community anchors. But before we do that, I want to acknowledge that the land that associated with San Jose State University is part of the traditional home of the Puechon Ohlone speaking people and the present day Muwekma Ohlone tribe. And so the Puechon Ohlone were missionized into both missions Dolores and Santa Clara. The present day Muwekma Ohlone tribe is comprised of all known surviving Native American lineages Aboriginal to the San Francisco Bay region who trace their ancestry through the mission San Jose, Santa Clara, and Dolores, and the historic federally recognized Barona Band of Alameda County. In the Muwekma Ohlone language, Kosanyo, Muwekma means the people. So without them, we would not have access to this gathering. We take the opportunity to thank the original caretakers of this land. And so that's something that I wanted to just take a moment to share with everyone. If you don't have strong knowledge of San Jose State University and the sovereign nations and first communities, First Nations, that it's the land that the university is located on or associated with, that hopefully will raise your awareness. So just returning to that definition of community anchor institutions, we heard from so many people today that had fabulous perspectives. John Windhausen got us started on a key definition, and in terms of thinking about how the formalized understanding of anchor institutions came from the FCC to define those organizations that drive access to the internet. And we know that within the last 20 years, we've seen big changes in terms of people accessing the internet. As many of you know, it used to be, people had their broadband connections, and how many of our patrons now are cell phone only? And so that's an important way to think about it. Our libraries anchor community information access. They anchor equity, digital equity especially, but also other dimensions of access, equity, and inclusion are addressed in our libraries worldwide. They also anchor community by providing key communications infrastructure, disaster response, social cohesion, as in their role as providing cultural centers for our communities. They also provide opportunities for learning and research. And I was so excited about the work that James Neal was describing about digital navigators and that model. And so I hope everyone takes a minute to check in with what James was sharing with us in the keynote panel. Cultural expression as well. In terms of our keynote panelists talking about communications infrastructure, Patty sharing some exciting projects where libraries are leading in digital equity. I hope you come back to Library 2.021, their website, because we're going to be sharing Patty's slides and James's slides so that you can be exposed to a lot more projects that they were excited about. I wish we had had like a 5-hour keynote to share everything that they're excited about. We didn't. The good thing is that we're going to have access to the slides. You'll be able to go back to Library 2.021 and see some of what they were wanting to share. So from a lot of the projects, and I tried to visit almost every project that was described in the sessions today, what we're seeing is that there's just endemic challenges to digital equity. And our presentations really made visible that there's lots of challenges that need to be addressed. And we talked a lot about infrastructure. We talked about crisis communications. I was in a wonderful session. Lee Din was talking about how crisis informatics can vary, like the way that we communicate can vary quite a lot based upon whether these are federal communications or state or local communications. And so there's a lot of progress that we can make in terms of being more strategic and how we communicate to the benefit of our communities. And I know that libraries have a strong role to play in communicating more effectively. Richelle Montoya talking about the challenges that our First communities and First Nations, our sovereign nations across the United States are experiencing with COVID, but also just still facing challenges with basic access. Having libraries in every community is not a given, and there's still a fight that we need to make to improve that situation. Now, libraries leading as community anchors. Like I mentioned, Patty's got some slides. We've got libraries that we've been working with in Maine, Nebraska, South Dakota, Arizona, Georgia, all places that are, and in those cases, they're propagating their backhaul internet access to new community spaces. And so what types of technologies are they using to make that happen? In some cases, they're using low orbit internet access via Starlink, which is a new thing. Some are using basic backhaul from their cable or other fiber lines to the library. And then some of them are using cognitive radios to connect their patrons with internet access in new community spaces. And some libraries are hesitant. They're wondering, am I allowed to do this? Am I allowed to use my E-rate connection to propagate out to the community? And I wanted to do that for a long time, but I'm scared that I might lose my funding. And so there's a lot of policy changes happening, a lot of openings that are available now that were not available 5 years ago. And COVID, we know, has added some momentum, some social momentum insofar as libraries are able to advocate for expanding internet access in ways that they haven't before. So I think it's really an exciting time. It's a challenging time, but it's really an exciting time as well. So next steps. So what does the future look like? If we look at some of these fabulous graduate students, both at the iSchool and beyond, we're seeing lots of data. lots of models, analytics, and informatics. In my own work, we're trying to use some of these data analytic techniques to make projections and predictions about which libraries in which communities would be most strategic for certain types of technology deployments. We kind of, it wasn't really something that we could do before. Before, we kind of had to rely on the advice from tech folks or trial and error and to understand whether a technology would be right for us. Not so anymore. There's a lot of data sets out there that we can use to try to predict the potential of a technology deployment. And that's exciting. That's really exciting. Some of the other data sets are communicating how crisis contexts are playing out in real time, via social media, and libraries understanding how communications play out in certain contexts can help them articulate a strategic role that they might play as a responder or a second responder in a crisis context. And so to me, having all of those data sets so libraries can quantitatively understand their potential for action in the community is really powerful. Building backhaul, if we're talking about the future and being emphasizing this dimension, just these dimensions of change, building backhaul is still a big issue. We have lots of libraries. We know from data sets that lots of libraries don't even have a backhaul connection to their library. What can we do about that? It sounds like IMLS and other federal funders are wanting to improve their investment in libraries. So let's try to pay attention to those calls for proposals, try to find out what's available. How can we build our backhaul? And there's some new technologies out there. Everybody's hearing about Starlink and the low Earth orbit opportunities and other new infrastructures. Maybe there's a connection in your community that is available, that it takes the right partnership to realize its potential. And that was something that Patty Wong was mentioning so strongly to me, both in the session today, but just interpersonally, just talking with her. She said libraries need to partner with other agencies to realize their goals. And that sometimes it's really challenging for libraries to make those connections, and for them not only to make the connections, but for them to sustainably maintain those relationships. But that should be a goal for everyone, to understand how they can leverage their interagency relationships more strategically. Propagating signals. We talked a lot about how libraries can blast their internet out to new community spaces. And a lot of that relies on new technologies like cognitive radios that use publicly available frequencies like TV white space or television signals. But there are other technologies as well. There are line of sight radios for some of those communities where community spaces are very close to the library, and they can just do a simple line of sight. And those are really, really cost effective. If you haven't heard about some of these line of sight radios, then it might be a new direction for you in your library. We talked more about new relationships and policy permeabilities. What was not possible 10 years ago with some of these policies in terms of thinking about kiosks that might provide internet to new community spaces. Maybe it wasn't possible 10 years ago, but now we can do it. Let's investigate. Let's, try to focus on the possibilities. We talked about new relationships, Patty really leading the charge for librarians articulating those relationships and trying to really sustain them. And then finally, change it's so important to think about some of these born digital programs, services, and collections. You know, COVID caught a lot of us on our heels, and we're like, oh, well, what are we going to do? The library's closed. People can't be coming in. So we have to develop a whole new slate of programming. And some of our presentations today articulated some of the really fantastic things people are doing with seniors, things that they're doing with students, things that they're doing with our early childhood to improve our born digital offerings. And I think that's really powerful. James Neal was also talking about programs and services that boost multiliteracies, and a lot of that stuff, now the technology allows us to do it at a distance. And so I noticed that Don Means joined us. Don, did you want to chime in on any of these issues?
Sure, Kristen, sorry I'm late. Thank you for carrying the ball once again. My old partner, Kristen, we've done a number of projects together. In wireless, as you were just talking about, there is a resource that I can offer to everybody through the course of our IMLS grants, looking at library wireless options. We were able to fund different projects that use these different types of wireless technologies that Kristen was talking about: TV white space, citizens band radio spectrum, educational broadband spectrum, 5 gigahertz, which is both our ordinary Wi-Fi, but also at a higher power can be used to connect line of sight over long distances. Excuse me. And then lately TV white space, which was a session that just finished. It ran over a bit. I'm sorry I was late, but this is basically internet from space that actually works, at least so far. It's early, but so far it's delivering 150, 200 megabit per second connections anywhere. You just plug in one of these radios and they connect to the satellites, and they're working. It's literally plug and play. They come bundled with a router, so you don't have to do anything except give it electricity and make sure it's not obstructed, because it's not line of sight. So that's all exciting as far as connectivity is concerned. As we said, connectivity is essential, but it's insufficient. This is where libraries come in, is they provide all the support services, the training, the devices, and all the things that people need to make use of the internet or digital services, wherever they may be, even if they're just stored in a local library. It is an interesting time, as the Chinese curse goes, and the world has been disrupted. Civilization has just turned on its ear like overnight when the COVID hit. And it seems like there's no going back to something normal, because we can just tell that people don't want to just go back. Many people want to do something differently, like permanently work from home or start their own business, or just not work in a business where they're exposed to working with, face-to-face with people all the time for different reasons. So what does that all mean to libraries? It's a new world. It's definitely a more digital world. But what does that mean to libraries and the service they provide? Libraries have always been flexible. That's one of their key strengths, is their flexibility. Whatever the community wants, the library will try to do it. And so that's why we call them the Swiss Army knife of public institutions. They show all these different tools and services, and I think you went through the list of some of the services. The one thing I wanted to add was the role in disaster response, which is what Kristen and I started as a project that was a dual use, both connectivity and disaster response. So libraries as second responders is a normal term, something between the police, the fire and ambulance, and everybody else, are institutions like libraries, which do play that role. Whether you plan to or not, people are going to show up at your door saying, what's going on? Give me information. Let me have communication. And so being ready for that is increasingly smart policy, because these disasters are increasing in severity and frequency. And I'd say the gift of COVID, if we can call it that, is that it's given us a sense that things are serious. There's a crisis after crisis last year, and again this year. And the big one, I think it make COVID look like a picnic, is a disruption in the climate. And what does that mean to libraries and how they provide services? So thinking about these things, planning for disaster response and the needs of communities, not just communities in need, but disasters come at all levels, from regional to personal. And libraries are there, and they're just magnificent in that role. But that's one I wanted to kind of mention or highlight among that list of overall, and that's just a partial list, of course, that Chris has put up on the screen. So wireless is super valuable. Knowledge about it is valuable. Whether you build it or buy it, the more you know about it, the better off you're going to be. And so spending time learning about it, experimenting with it, is time well spent.
That's fabulous, Don. I just wanted to move through to our final slide. Let's see if we can. We had so many voices today, and I hope that some of our all of our speakers that we aren't yet connected with will consider connecting with us now. We are gaining momentum with building a strong research and practice community around issues of digital equity and how to deploy technologies, build collections, and develop programs and services that allow libraries to do what they do best, which is take care of their communities and connect community members with information. Now, this project must acknowledge the contributions of the Library 2.0 2-1 worldwide virtual conference folks. Steve Hargadon's fabulous. The heavy lifting for this event today was really carried by him. I also want to acknowledge the SJSU's School of Information. I can't say enough about SJSU creating contexts for people to connect, especially around key issues like digital equity. I also want to acknowledge Torreon Community Libraries and Rochelle Montoya, who's been a fabulous collaborator. Shelby School Health and Libraries Broadband Coalition, and John Windhausen especially has been a wonderful collaborator. Of course, ALA, our bread and butter organization, being so supportive of us, and Patty Wong articulating so many connections. And I think the priorities, I mean, she is right on with the priorities in our community, what we need to pay attention to right now. And finally, IMLS, guiding us in a lot of ways with their strategic directions and investments, which help us think about the field from a funding perspective, but also just the great minds there, especially people like James Neal and so many others. So thank you. Don, did you want to chime in on any of the acknowledgements or just say a little bit about how folks can connect with us?
Certainly. One thing, Kristen, because we, doing the opening and closing, and I did a breakout, I wasn't able to see any of the other breakouts. And the list that was put together by Steve and you and myself to some degree is an impressive list of speakers and topics: telehealth, anchor institutions in Ghana. I mean, just the widest range of topics around this theme of libraries as key anchor institutions. And I'm really looking forward to watching those, since they're all recorded and archived. And I advise and hope everybody else would take advantage of that. No, I don't. I mean, other than, yes, you just listed the panelists, and that's great, and all the other people who took the time to prepare a session, a whole breakout session. Who there are too many to list, but they're there. And we thank them all.
Yeah, definitely. It looked like we have about 5 minutes left, which we should definitely use up. And it seemed like there were a couple of questions out there. Maybe we have time to answer a couple.
Sure.
I saw some hands that were raised.
We'll recognize the hands. I'll scan the
I don't
chat.
know if I can.
It's not really
see.
easy in the webinar version to bring someone in. And I don't see any hands, but you're welcome to put a note in the chat if you would like to ask a question, or you can use.
Okay, yeah, let's do it that way. And thank you for everyone's kind words that I've been seeing in the chat box. That's really, really fabulous. So thanks everyone for your support of the event.
These have been going on for a long time. How long have you been doing these, Steve? That's a question for me.
I think we're in our 12th year.
Wow.
Yeah, we started in 2011.
Wow.
Our first one, and it started as a 24-hour multi-day conference.
I remember that. I might have
Yeah.
presented at that first one.
You might have.
24 hours. Oh my goodness. So San Jose State, as I understand it, is the largest librarian school anywhere. Is that true?
I believe that's still true.
Okay. And much of the program is online. It has been for a long time. Is that also true?
It's
Yes,
only
it
online.
was born digital.
Only.
Yes.
So you were able to absorb the requirements of the pandemic probably as well or better than anybody else.
Yes.
Somebody's
go.
asking, where do we go to see the recordings?
So the recordings get posted on library20.com next week. An email is sent to everybody who registered, giving them a link to that. And they're also hosted on YouTube.
And the slides will be there next week as well.
If presenters send me the slides, I typically upload those slides to the discussion forum that had the full description of their session. And sometimes we will include them on that recording page too.
Okay, that's great.
And you also include the chat, I think you said, Steve, for at least the opening session.
We do. In fact, we've been including the chat for all of the sessions the last couple of conferences because people love it so much.
Yeah, there's a lot goes on in there. So there's a link beside the video link and maybe a slides link to a chat link all around that session.
Correct.
All right, great.
We also had a question about, with regard to the tech industry, are you seeing an increase in donations, whether financial and or in kind? I actually don't feel like I could speak to that, whether donations have increased. I think that maybe some of the civic awareness on the part of corporations has increased in the COVID context with regard to broadband and other forms of internet access, but I can't really speak to donations.
Yeah, it's interesting that it has not been a popular destination for corporate giving, as far as I can tell. Foundations, well, actually, notably Gates was the leading foundation. I don't know if anyone else has come close to stepping up to Gates and supporting public libraries. They're local, and what is interesting is that most donations come from wealthier individuals in communities, and that the people that use the library the most are the least likely to donate to the library. They feel like by using the library, they're donating to the library, which is interesting. But, I just, there are grant sources, and we're seeing more state money for, especially as you mentioned, Kristen, for connectivity. Mm-hmm. Now that's being understood that libraries play this essential role in bridging the divide. They're the place of last resort. So,
which is great.
Yeah.
I think we're actually coming up on 3 o'clock now. And so I just want to say thank you once again. And I hope everyone keeps these ideas in mind and makes great improvements at their own organization.
And thank you, Kristen.
Everyone.
Especially thank you, Kristen, for doing a great job.
Thank you. You too, Don. Great job.
Okay. Next time.
Everybody, do be aware that you can go to library20.com and you can communicate directly with the presenters by clicking on their profile there. Thanks again for another great conference. We'll see you in 2022.
Yep. See you in 2022. Bye, guys.
Bye now.
Thank you again.